find their podcast at 957cruisefm.ca. Welcome to the Locker Room.
How you doing, Pepper?
I'm doing okay. Really happy to be here.
Now, Pepper is going to chat with us about... We're going to get to a bunch of terms. I think I want you to give me definitions of some of the terms that are going to come up, okay? Keep in mind, dumb guys about this topic, so you may have to fill in the holes.
I was going to say, Pepper's an expert on polyamorous lifestyles.
And non-monogamous relationships.
Multiple partners, swinging.
Yeah.
Everything. Glory holes.
Glory holes, yes. I just want to say out loud that I'm not an expert. And in fact...
Well, you teach courses.
I do teach up courses, but I don't consider myself an expert because this is a fairly new thing to mainstreaming, and a lot of the documentation and books and podcasts that are created out there are created by people who don't have any relationship coaching or psychology degrees. We're just a bunch of people who have been doing this and making our own mistakes and kind of like trying to express those mistakes out loud.
Learning
so
from
other
experience.
People,
So you're an expert.
So, but I don't like the word expert. I just don't.
You've been doing this since 1995. We'll call you an expert. You don't have to call yourself an expert.
Ahead of the trend there.
Okay. So first off, you are actually teaching people about this lifestyle at the Taboo Sex Show.
Yes.
Can you give us a rundown of when, if anybody's interested in joining one of these seminars, let's do that right out of the gates. When and how do we find out any information about your seminars?
So I will be at the Taboo Show, and my seminar times are... Today at 7:30, I'll be talking about swinging culture. It's the presentation's called Opening Up. Tomorrow at 1:30, I will be giving a presentation on managing jealousy and envy in your relationships.
I'd imagine that's a big thing.
Yeah, it is. It's the most common question, actually. And then Saturday evening at 6:30, I'm doing the Opening Up, exploring swinging culture again. And then on Sunday at 1:30, I have a presentation called So You Caught the Feels, Transitioning from Swing to Polyamory.
Okay. So that's a good starting point, I think, in the discussion that we want to have with you. Mm-hmm. If you are in a polyamorous relationship...
First of all, what's polyamorous mean?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. The beginning is consensual non-monogamy is the umbrella term.
And a monogamous relationship is what Grant and I are in.
We're not.
We found a...
with your partner.
With our wives.
Yes. We'll explore what Jimmy's into later.
Yeah.
That might fall under kinks and fetishes, but
we're married. We don't have people.
We're not inviting multiple partners into the bedroom with us. So, but that is an excellent starting point. Thank you, Grant.
Yes.
Yeah.
So consensual non-monogamy or ethical non-monogamy is the umbrella term. And the three major subcategories underneath that are swinging or the lifestyle, polyamory, and kink to some degree as well. And so how you can define the difference between those is swing focuses more on sexual non-monogamy.
Okay.
It's a spectrum. So anytime you have humans touching on something, it turns into a spectrum. So even within swinging, you have some people that are just like in and out, nice to meet you, never see you again.
I find it very hard not to make jokes here.
Right?
I'm giggling.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
It's okay. Keep going.
But you also have, the term is called progressive swinger. And these are people who, even though they're not looking to engage in full romantic relationships with each other, think really good friends with benefits. So these are people that may even have children that interact together, and they have board game nights or Sunday dinners or Friendsgiving together, things like that. So and then polyamory is like the full meal deal where you're engaging in a full romantic, emotionally connected relationship.
So you have your husband and then you have your boyfriend.
And girlfriend.
Yeah.
So is there an entry point that's more common into this world than is swinging kind of the first step for most people in this lifestyle?
I would say that it's the majority kind of find swing first because that's the cultural, You see it in porn, you see it in, stuff like that.
It's more common.
Right. But more and more people are entering polyamory from a place of, we want to do this not sexually, but more romantically. And they're doing it with intention. They're reading the books, they're going to the blog, and they're like, okay, we're going to open up. And it could be sexual, it could be emotional. We have other people that they get to that point where they're like, oh, I'm starting to catch the feels. And they're like, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I envisioned for my journey. And so they take a step back at that point and go back into more of a swing mindset. It really is individual. And it depends on not just the person, but the people they're relating to, because everyone has unique experiences and belief structures. And so every time you add someone new into the mix, that's going to cause a ripple effect out into the entire relationship structure.
Grant's going to keep an eye on the text in case anybody has any questions. But the one thing that we were talking about off air just before we jumped on was the fact that this is something that has grown considerably in the last whatever year. And I think a lot of it has to do with social media. People are able to find more information. There's more of a connection, I guess, and there's more of a collective revolving around this ideology. And the idea of what relationships has really changed. Even an article, I was telling you, an article from Bumble, they're making predictions about 2024 and dating strategies and things like that. And one of the sections in that article that I read last night was that the rejection of traditional monogamous relationships is expected to increase. So people are looking for information. They're getting more comfortable with the idea that you don't just settle down with somebody, one person for the rest of your life. And I think a lot of that has to do with the lack of success of that in today's world as well. So that's where you come in. What's the biggest issue you deal with when people come to you and looking for advice on getting into this type of a relationship?
Oh, okay. So my number one piece of advice to people who want to get into or want to explore non-monogamy, especially if they're already with a partner, so you're in a monogamous relationship and you want to open that up, it starts with radical self-awareness.
Okay.
So it's really important. But seriously, first you have to figure out what you want, what your vision is for your journey, what your boundaries are, what your needs are, what your bottom line is, to be able to communicate that, because you've developed agreements within your monogamous relationship over the years that you've been together. And it started out slowly where, little mistakes were made. And
some of it's unspoken too.
Right. Lots of unspoken agreements. And you have to kind of, go through that, because in the world today, we are modeled monogamy. There's no good modeling as we're growing up, and it is changing, but there's no real good modeling as we're growing up for healthy non-monogamy. So there's also that we call it mononormative scripting that catches you sometimes, and that feeds into this isn't supposed to feel good. This isn't supposed to be okay. I shouldn't be happy about my wife being happy with someone else, or I shouldn't be happy about, or I shouldn't, feel turned on by my wife engaging with someone else or something like that. And so
I'll admit, if Gary comes over to the house to take my wife out, I'm going to have a really hard time with that.
Yeah.
I'm being honest. I'm fascinated by this from the outside looking in. I can't wrap my head around.
Right.
There's
that world.
I can't.
Well, because you have no actual healthy expressions of it from when you were growing up. I think as non-monogamy
No, I have no
mainstreams-
healthy at all from relationships. Everybody in my family they were all a disaster. If anything, I probably curated the healthiest relationship in my family to date with my wife. And the funny thing is, and they can attest to this, if you met my wife, you would go, what the hell's going on here? Not one person, and at our wedding, was looking at the two of us standing up there going, wow, this is going to last.
This is an even
and you
pairing.
could feel that energy in that room. So I don't know. I can't really explain me or my situation. And we'll be celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary. I think every situation
congratulations. That's unique today.
That is very unique. We don't have any friends. Nobody in our family has been together that long. When we were
I've
at
been
a
with
wedding,
my husband for 25 years, and the whole time
you've had
we've been non-monogamous
relationship.
the entire relationship. In fact, I remember that day telling him, because this was I met him in 98, and again, no mainstreaming. There was still a lot of discrimination. The word I want to use, I hope is okay, slut shaming happened quite a bit.
We'll beat that out.
Okay, sorry. I'm not sure what the right word to use, but there was a lot of discrimination.
That's fine. You're fine. You're fine, Pepper.
So when I sat there, he said the L word. He said, I love you. And I was like, oh.
I thought it was going to be lesbian.
Yeah. He's like, I love you. And I was like, oh, well, here's 3 things you need to know about me that might stop this relationship in its tracks.
And it
didn't. No. And for him, it was because he had experienced non-monogamy in his past, just not the ethical kind, between him and his previous relationships. And he was like, you know what? Honesty sounds best here, so I'm willing to give this a try with you. Because that's really the difference, is everyone's just being honest, open, and transparent about what's going on in their lives. I mean, how many people do you know or have heard of as, like, they're together for 11 years and the husband or the wife starts stepping out?
Yeah.
It's because we have this, we're raised with this idea that we have this, it's called the relationship escalator, that we find the person that we want to spend the rest of our lives with. We move in together, we get married, we have kids, we get a dog, white picket fence, blue door, right?
Yeah.
But that's starting to shatter. Like that ideal is starting to shatter because
it has been for years.
Yeah.
Pepper. I mean, we've been disintegrating that concept forever. I mean, what are we? Are we over 50% of most relationships
in
after
Canada? The last statistic was 62%.
But
that was
there's
2022, I think.
When you
62%.
break that down, that's people that get married when they're 20. And then like people that get married older stay together longer. It's you can really break it down into subcategories.
But still, that is not a good success rate.
Yeah.
But
right?
those statistics
You kind of
also
sound like your
show
team.
those statistics will also show the evolution of the deconstruction of whatever power structure kept people in place. Because I bet you in the 50s, a lot more wives wanted divorces, but unfortunately, they couldn't open their own bank account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
different
as
worlds.
Power structures and what we were experiencing, those power structures are starting to break apart. We talked about, religion and monogamy. We talked about, you can talk about ownership of the womb and things like that that led to monogamous society.
Yeah.
That are starting to break down. So the more that breaks down, it's almost like a snowball effect. It happens faster and faster and faster. And so it was 2018 that Google said that their number one researched relationship term was polyamory. That was 2018.
Wow.
That's when I really started to dig deep and start doing what I do. I'd been mentoring people because, when someone finds out that I've been doing this for 27 plus years, right? They're like,
curious.
you're like, hey, can you give me tips, tricks? What mistakes have you made? And that's when I really started doing this, because sometimes people read this thing online and there's a struggle in their relationship because not one person can be your everything. Like you talk about your wife and monogamy, but she's not your everything. You've got a close relationship with Grant. You've got a close relationship with Jimmy.
Yeah,
they fulfill
cuddling,
some of
mainly with Jimmy.
Well, but they fulfill some of your emotional and relational needs that your wife can't fulfill.
Yeah.
Polyamory is the same thing, except we're engaging, we're opening that up to multiple genders, and it's okay for me to be best friends with a man, or it's okay for me to engage in more intimacy and cuddling with a man or woman or non-binary individual.
We've had a couple of conversations about this in the past on the Locker Room, and the one thing that I was actually kind of surprised with is that a lot of these relationships in the polyamorous world, the non-monogamous relationships out there, a lot of them aren't even sexual, and that was something that I was like, oh, okay, this is just you're using another framework to basically navigate the world that we live in, right?
Yeah.
And I think, we talked about extroverts versus introverts before we got on air, and I think everybody has different needs. The amount of communication this must take, though.
Yes. So that's why you have to start with the radical self-awareness, because you can't communicate or negotiate your relationship agreements with anyone if you don't know what your needs are, what your boundaries are, what your bottom line, like, this is it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes in monogamy, we also have a tendency to lean on those social structures to try to, like, get over the hump, right? Like, oh, we've been together 5 years. We've got 3 young kids. It's the kids. It's all like the time that we, but you stopped communicating. That's actually what the issue was. Or once the kids are gone, empty nest syndrome is a huge thing. I know many people in my age range that when their kids hit 20, whatever, left home, they struggled for the first couple of years because they had fundamentally changed as individuals while raising these kids and not communicating with each other.
We've talked about that on this show because my wife and I have been empty nesting over the last couple of years.
Something to do on the weekends.
That's why we got scooters. No, you know what? I want to take a break. Don't let me forget to give away the passes we have for the Taboo Sex Show.
Right, yes.
Okay, don't let me forget. We're gonna do a couple of tunes. We'll get back. I want to break down the difference between, because this has come up quite a bit, and you deal with this as well, the difference between a kink and a fetish. And then we can get into a conversation about Jimmy's.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, too.
Yeah.
I need clarification on. So.
Okay, well, I'll do the best I can.
Okay.
I don't normally muck around on the kink side of things because I'm just like a practitioner myself. There's lots of wonderful people in the city that I could point you to that would be better for that, but I can give it a try.
We'll send Jimmy to them because he needs an explanation.
This is The Locker Room with Lachlan Cross, Grant Johnson, and James P. White.
Okay, Taboo Sex Show is happening this weekend here in Edmonton. Pepper is doing a number of, what do you call them? Presentations, I guess.
Presentations, seminars, whatever.
Seminars at the Taboo Sex Show about the polyamorous life. She actually mentioned them. There'll be a breakdown of what she's doing this weekend on the podcast, so find that after the show if you're curious. It's probably up on the Taboo webpage as well.
Yes. So if you just Google Taboo Edmonton, it'll bring up the city page for Taboo. Just click on the seminars picture, and my name is listed there under Belle Pepper Phillips.
Perfect. Okay, so if you want to check out Pepper this weekend, look into that. Jimmy's hooking a couple of people up with passes right now that we have to give away because they guessed Jimmy's fetish. Grant's going to tell the story about how, as a radio show, The Locker Room, we discovered Jimmy's fetish.
One of the guesses was, is it being belittled by a 6'4" aging bald man? Does that get your motor running? So we were out for...
Your little spoon!
We were out for Super Bowl. We went to a bunch of different listeners' houses to watch the Super Bowl, and we ended up at a pub. And we were having some drinks, and then when it was time to go home, Locke and Jimmy were going to split an Uber because Locke lived in St. Albert, Jimmy lived in Stony Plain Road, so it was on the way.
hood.
And we couldn't remember how to split an Uber. It was new at the time. So they're trying to figure out how to, like, get it to stop at Jimmy's place and then go to Lachlan's, and they split it. And so I took Jimmy's phone, and I said, here, let me Google it. And I opened up his Google, and in his Google searches was... a very specific search many, many times over there and in his history and everything. And we went, what's this all about, Jimmy? And that was the day we learned that he likes to be dressed up as a baby.
Oh.
And bottle fed.
That's not it.
That's not it.
No. Grant
But there
changes
are
it all
some
the time.
people who do have a kink for that, and that is okay.
See, what I'm going to say is that's a kink, not a fetish, right?
What we found out about Jimmy is more of a fetish, I think. The kink, it would be, I'm going to dress up as a baby and you're going to swaddle me and spank me. So that's more of a kink, right?
Well, I think it depends. So from what I understand, and I'm sure there are going to be kinksters out there that are like, no, that's not the way. Because again, in my seminar, I talk about this. When someone uses a label at you, like kink, like poly, like polyamorous or whatever, it's good to ask them what that label means to them, because
to them. Okay.
Because it's a spectrum, right? So there's this term in polyamory called kitchen table polyamory. And if you ask 50 people what it means, you'll get 50 different answers, because it's really individual to them and what they feel. And so in my understanding, the difference between a kink and a fetish is a kink turns into a fetish when it becomes the primary source of your sexual.
That's what I was going to say. Isn't a fetish like you need it? Almost like you got to put my leg in a bear trap and then punch me in the face. Otherwise, I'm not going to get it.
I actually do know a person from my far, far past. This isn't someone I know
into
currently.
Bear traps?
No. They will not be able to achieve orgasm unless they are having hand on their throat.
Yeah.
And so wherever that comes from, whatever, that's their thing. And so that, I would say, would be a full fetish. Whereas, like for me, for instance, I don't mind bondage. I like being tied up sometimes and restrained.
Okay.
But I don't need that to come off. It's
Jimmy's
just
smiling
like,
because he's into that. Dude.
Yeah.
He likes a good spank.
Yeah. Well,
Jimmy's got a list of stuff and we've always sort of thought that, because he's 49 tomorrow,
right,
and he has
Congratulations, Jimmy.
he's had very limited interaction with the opposite sex.
Yeah.
And so, I've always, and Grant and I have teased him about the idea that if he found somebody that was
community,
yes, where he could express himself, he would be
on cloud nine. Okay, so that actually leads me to one of the things that is the biggest misconception in swing, in my opinion. And that is, if you go to a club, you will engage in sexual activity. That is not true at all. In fact, you should never walk into a situation with that expectation, because if it doesn't happen, you'll feel 10 times worse than it didn't happen than if you had gone in going, I'm just going to go party. And so most of like swing clubs, quote unquote swing clubs or lifestyle clubs, they're just like a regular bar, most of them. Like you just walk in and there's like a dance floor and a bar, because they have to keep the sexual interaction separate in a completely separate space. And sometimes you can go into these places and voyeurs will just go there just to see what the people
what's
look
going
like.
on.
Watchers.
And it's okay to flirt, right? Whereas if you're going to like, I don't know, some club on Jasper, right? You can't necessarily just run around flirting with everybody's partners, because you're going to get yourself into trouble. But in a swing club or in that type of an environment, that's why I tend to go, is I feel more free. I can dress any way I want and no one's going to say anything to me. I can express myself as much as I want or as little as I want. I don't have to play. I can just watch.
Yeah.
The other thing that I tell people is that consent culture. So making sure consent is given freely,
which is a big part
is a huge part of the community, especially now. And so consent culture runs through the clubs very. So I can go to, again, a club on Jasper. I'm not going to name the club. And when I go from the dance floor to the bathroom, I call it the gauntlet, because I get grabbed, I get groped, I get whatever.
Really?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, it's bad. But when I go to one of the swing clubs, that never happens. And if it does happen, it's taken care of, like now, taken care of. And it doesn't matter what gender you are. If you're pushy, you're not consent driven, you will be removed from the space.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So there are some girls that are monogamously minded girls that I hang out with. They just want to go out and dance and, shake their moneymaker without being inundated.
Yeah.
And I take them to the club with me.
Jimmy, our Grant wanted to ask a very specific question about the swinger clubs that we talked about last night.
Yeah. What is the best thing to bring for the buffet? So I'm going to a swinger
no
party.
Buffet.
What?
You're going to a
Not
swinger
in a
party,
club.
not in a club.
So I'm driving around St. Albert, because that's where all the swingers are. I see a garage door halfway open and some pink flamingos out.
Yeah.
Not true. But okay.
Is that not true? Wow. I go in. Is there going to be a buffet?
Yeah. So potluck. So
Potluck, okay.
if you're not invited, chances are, if you walk through that door, you'll be asked to leave because these are usually
Right.
closed parties.
Well, I
if
have
you
the
are
code.
invited, and this is another tip that I give, get ready to invest in costuming because lifestylers
Jimmy
love
again.
a themed party.
Jimmy, why are you not more involved in this?
So chances are the party has a theme. There's themes every weekend at the club.
Star
and
Wars.
so they'll actually tell you
What color's
this
your
is-
lightsaber?
They'll tell you if there's like a signature cocktail that's going to be available
Wow.
at the party. There might be a potluck. There might not be a potluck. Like it runs the gambit. And if there is a potluck, normally there's a sign-up sheet. My favorite thing to bring to a potluck, especially around the holidays,
I can't believe we're having this
is
conversation.
called.
Well, you're
is-
not going to do all that work without feeding yourself, right?
Well, there's this thing called Christmas crack. I don't know if you've ever had it. It's like Twizzlers with caramel on it.
Yeah.
I like to take that. Anything really not super greasy,
Okay.
I would say.
That's fair. Yeah. Fried
Like-
chicken is out.
think about
I will not bring
think
fried
about what
chicken.
might be happening.
Yeah. Well, listen, Pepper, this has been wildly educational. I really appreciate it. I encourage anybody that is even remotely interested in this lifestyle to join you at the Taboo Sex Show this weekend. And again, go to the webpage. Pepper's seminars are displayed on the webpage. And have you given away the passes? Okay, all right. If you want a pair of passes to that Taboo Sex Show, just text Jimmy. He'll hook you up, 780-989-0957. We got to bring Took in.
Right.
They're standing out there.
I know, and I'm excited.
You're a fan. You got a T-shirt.
I even put their T-shirt on today.
All right, well, you go introduce yourself to
I
them.
did also want to just quick plug. If I'm not on the seminar stage at Taboo, you can find me at booth 134.
Okay,
There we go.
perfect. Booth
Yeah.
134. That sounds dirty.
Jimmy will be there this
Yeah.
weekend buying some new gear. So
All right, yeah, watch for Jimmy. He goes to these things.
Oh, there's lots of gear there.
Yeah.
All right.
There's
okay.
lots of gear.
Pepper, thanks for coming down.
No worries.
All right, you have a good one.
Anytime. I look forward to the next time.
Take care, my friend.
The Locker Room for Arden Roof Systems. Weekday mornings on 95.7 Cruise FM.